Let me plug in my laptop so I can do some journalism. Hello everybody, I am really excited to be reporting that the Booker Longlist 2025 has been announced. And I would be embarrassed by how excited I was for this list if I wasn't surrounded by other people who are just as excited. Everyone's been trying to predict the books, and once again, most of us are wrong. If you watched my Booker Longlist video, you will see that I only got 2 right, and this is quite, again, I knew that this would happen. Every year I spend ages researching the books, looking into all the different possibilities, and then it's a load of books I've never heard of. Some of these are familiar to me from my research, and like I say, 2 of them were on my own prediction list. So I'm going to talk you through my thoughts on the list, and maybe let's discover together what the books are that I've not heard of. Some of them will be familiar, some of them a little bit more niche. I was really hoping for SJP to help me stick some Taylor Jenkins Reid on the list, but unfortunately she did not play ball with this plan that I did not tell her about. So we have 5 judges. The chair of the panel is Roddy Doyle, who is an Irish author. He has previously won the Booker Prize back in 1993 for his book, which is Paddy something ha ha ha. Paddy something ha ha ha. It's a book I haven't read, but yet he is a winner, and obviously he's in charge of the whole thing. Let me bring up the other ones. So the book that I failed to remember the name of was Paddy Clark, ha ha ha. And from his bio, it sounds like Roddy Doyle is a massive bibliophile, so that's good. It's always good to have someone who loves what they do on the panel. We also have fellow novelist Ayobami Adebayo, who was also longlisted for the Booker for one of her books. Her books are called Stay With Me and A Spell of Good Things. We also have Chris Power, who wrote a book that I think I have on my shelf because his name is very familiar. And apparently he's really involved in kind of sharing stuff as well. As probably most of you will know, we've got Sarah Jessica Parker, who has her own imprint, has her own recommendations, which can be quite eclectic. So I was hoping for her to bring some middlebrow energy to the list. We'll have to see how that went on. But again, we've got no my wild card isn't on the list. And of course there's Kylie Reid, who writes excellent books with titles that probably could be catchier, because I read her debut. Her debut is called Such a Fun Age, and it is a brilliant book with lots of social commentary. It was amusing, it was satirical, it was really, really good, but doesn't have a very tempting title, and neither does Come and Get It. So I feel she is an author who deserves more recognition, and I'm really, really glad that she is on the panel. So those are our panelists who have chosen the long list. And all of you doing Herkyed, anyone who is following my channel for Herkyed content, one of the prompts obviously is prize season. So we have lots of things to choose from on the Booker list. Also, I feel I now have 2 lists, because I have the list of books that I read the blurb of and really wanted to read while researching this, and then obviously there's the actual list, which I'm intrigued to find out more about. What made it onto the list? It's either glasses. It's either glasses, or I know there's a lot of shine, but I can't actually see what it says on the screen without them, so I probably better keep them on. So they've made a lovely little graphic of all these books together, and they do look good together. They do make a nice, pretty shelf. So the first thing I noticed, and again, there are 13 books on the Booker dozen, which I think is pretty usual. So there's 2 that I predicted, and joyfully, there is 1 book that I've already read on the list, which I'm very pleased about because it was a smashing book. And let's see, how many of these have I heard of? Yeah, there were 3 books on there that the critics were kind of championing, which are Flesh by David Chalet, The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, and Flashlight. Those 3 did come on lists that the critics were predicting, along with Endling, which was one that was on my list, which sounded very interesting and like a combination of serious issues along with entertainment, it sounds like, from the blurb. And the other one that I predicted was Universality, and again, that has a killer blurb that just made me want to go out and buy it immediately. The fact that those 2 are on the list does not surprise me. Then the one that I have read is Audition by Katie Kitamura. I'm going to talk about this one first because this book is brilliant. It is a book in like 2 halves, as it were, and it starts off simple enough with a meeting of an actor, and she meets in a restaurant with a younger man, and there is a question over what these people's relationship is to each other. And it seems that there's been a misunderstanding between these 2 people. So the first part is about how they meet, how this young man comes into this older actor's life, and how she's on stage preparing for her next play. And then we have the second part. And the less I say about the second part, the better, really. The second part, things seem to have shifted somewhat, and a lot of people are in a kind of what the dickens is going on here for the second part. And at the end, there were so many different theories on Goodreads. I did think it was, for me, I felt it all clicked into place, and I felt I understood what had happened, so I got very confused seeing all these alternate explanations for what had happened. But this was a brilliant book. We read it for Camp Litzy, which is an event on the reading, like the social media platform Litzy, and Audition was a brilliant book, and I really, now that I know that they've got it on the long list, I'm really rooting for it to make the short list because it was a great book. Obviously, it depends on what I think of everything else. The other 2 on the list that I am not at all surprised to see there, one is Universality. Now, if you watch my previous video, you will know that this is the story of a murder, basically. There is apparently an illegal rave somewhere in Yorkshire, and someone gets beaten to death with a gold bar. Starts with the initial expose, apparently. I've not read the book, but it starts with kind of what happened, a journalist uncovering the story of this horrible murder. But then the story spirals out into other people who were involved in the vicinity, and apparently there's a lot of kind of stuff about ambiguity, how far we can believe the truth, and yeah, I'm just really interested to know where this book goes. And the other book that I wasn't at all surprised to see here, again on the blurb and also on the buzz, was Endling by Maria Reva. This is a book set in Ukraine, and it's about, I believe it's about women who are on dating sites, but for reasons other than trying to find true love. And I think there's several of them. One is a biologist who is researching snails out in the sticks in the wilderness somewhere, and she's wanting to fund her research. And then there's a couple of other people who are trying to find out what happened to their missing mother, I think it was. Apparently there's a truck full of kidnapped bachelors, so I really want to know how this ends up going to this place. But it's also set on the background of the Russian invasion, so there is likely to be a lot of extra commentary and things going on there, because extremely dreadful time for Ukraine. So the book sounds absolutely fascinating. I would love to read it. Whether or not it is more of a story or more of a political book, I would be interested to find out how far how far it goes in either direction. So that's probably one of the first ones I'm going to be picking up off the list, and hopefully I'll be able to review it here when I'm done. The other ones that I've heard about from the critics, so Flesh by David Chalet. This book has had so much buzz that I'm surprised that it's, well, I'm not surprised at all that it's on the list. I'm surprised I didn't put it on the list. Maybe it is, as I said in my other video, maybe it is just my aversion to the word flesh. Ugh. Hate it. By that logic, I also should have put the Alan Hollinghurst on the list. So, you know, there's just too many of them that could have been on the list this year. But this one was definitely one that has not been ignored by people trying to predict it. David Chalet has he been longlisted before? He's definitely been, I don't know if he's won or just been longlisted before. Anyway, this is about a 15-year-old young man called Istvan, who grew up in Hungary, and it sounds like he is taken advantage of by an older neighbour, gets into a sexual relationship with her, from what I can tell from the blurb, and then again, I think probably because of plot spoilers, apparently then there's some kind of accidental violent death. And then, I don't know whether this is linked or not, Istvan ends up emigrating to London, where he ends up being a driver for billionaires. I'm not sure if one billionaire or several billionaires, but he ends up kind of emigrating and living quite a successful life. And it sounds like there are, you know, the words like propulsive, hypnotic, there's lots of words like that suggest that this is going to be a fast-paced novel. There's a whiff of Donna Tartt about, you know, if you've read The Goldfinch, you'll probably know what I mean there in terms of kind of moving to other countries and various stuff happening. But obviously Donna Tartt is a very kind of slow, meditative writer, whereas this sounds like it's going to be a bit more high adrenaline. Although, having not read any David Chalet, I'm not sure. This one's probably, again, going to make the shortlist. You see how I'm predicting the shortlist already? I got this really, really wrong for the Women's Prize, so maybe read the ones that I don't suggest. Another one that I read about recently from, again, from experts trying to predict the list is The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. Yeah, so from what it looks like, this is about two people, relatively young people, who are studying in Vermont. I think both of them are from India originally, and it looks like from the blurb their parents or grandparents tried to matchmake them at one point, and they meet, and it's about how they're both lonely and about how they're trying to navigate life together. It does not say whether this is a romantic relationship or a friendship, and like I say, it doesn't really say that much. So I'm not sure if this is going to be one of those books that isn't very plot heavy, or if it's a book that's just the blurb. The blurb is not very, what's the word when you draw people in? The blurb's not very magnetic. Anyway, this is by Karan Desai. I have not read anything by this author, but I have heard of her. So yeah, I'm excited to see if that one's any good. It was one of the critics' choices, as it were. The other book that was highlighted was Flashlight by Susan Choi. Now, this book I did consider putting on my maybes list because I absolutely adore the cover. And yeah, this is the cover, and I just think it's very, very attractive and the sort of thing that if I saw it on a shelf, I would pick it up. This is a story about a girl called Louisa who, when she was 10, her dad goes missing when they go for a walk on a Japanese beach with a flashlight. And so there's a central mystery there as to what happened to her father, presumed drowned. Anyway, her mother, who is called Anne, then takes her back to America where she's from. And it's kind of about how things kind of unravel from there. Apparently the rest of the family they're estranged from because they have moved back to Pyongyang in North Korea, which is not something I know much about in terms of moving to North Korea. So it looks like there's going to be themes of the North Korean regime, and probably there's going to be a mystery of what actually happened to Louisa's father all that time ago. Themes of kind of trauma, emigration, and it sounds like it takes place in a number of different places. So yeah, that looks like an interesting book, and yeah, it was one that I was thinking about reading myself, so glad to see it there on the long list. One boat. I'm not sure. Have I heard of One Boat, or am I just thinking of Small Boat from the International Booker? Let's have a look what this one's about. So One Boat is a Fitzcarraldo edition, so it's got the typical blue cover, and it's by Jonathan Buckley. Now this sounds like it's a book about grief. So a woman called Teresa goes to a town on the Greek coast to grieve the death of her father, and about a decade ago she was there grieving the loss of her mother. So when she's there, she meets people that she met last time, and it's about their kind of intertwining stories and their own grief. It sounds like she meets someone else who went to the same place to do some grieving as well for the death of his nephew. It doesn't sound like there's so much of a plot as a premise. Fitzcarraldo editions tend to be quite good from the ones I've read, the fiction offerings that they've published. So yeah, hopefully this one will have something to offer as well. It sounds like she's going to move to a place and interact with some characters, and I have no idea where that's going to go. So the next book on the list is a debut, and this is Misinterpretation by Lydia Shoga. And again, this is another wonderful cover. I really would be drawn to this if I saw this in a bookshop. And yeah, I think I have a bit of a thing about purple, and also a bit of a thing about minimalist modern covers. But yeah, I'm going to read the blurb to you about on this one, because it is. I try not to do this because I've been told not to, but I'm going to read the blurb to you about this one because it does sound interesting. So, in present-day New York City, an Albanian interpreter reluctantly agrees to work with Alfred, a Kosovar torture survivor, during his therapy sessions. Despite her husband's cautions, she soon becomes entangled in her client's struggles. Alfred's nightmares stir up her own buried memories, and an impulsive attempt to help a Kurdish poet leads to a risky encounter and a reckless plan. As ill-fated decisions stack up, jeopardizing the nameless narrator's marriage and mental health, she takes a spontaneous trip to reunite with her mother in Albania, where her life in the United States is put into stark relief. When she returns to face the consequences of her actions, she must question what is real and what is not. So it sounds like a book where you've got a main character who's getting overly involved in her clients' lives, overly invested, and making decisions that influence their outcomes, and then start spiraling as a result. It sounds like there's some contrast between kind of where her family are and where she comes from and her life in the United States, and it almost sounds like it's going to get a bit, because when it says she's questioning what's real or what's not, are we going to get a bit of a slightly surreal vibe? I do love, in the same way that I loved Audition, I do like books that play with reality. I like books where you're not really sure what's going on, but that do kind of have a cohesive sense at the end. Yeah, that would be high up on the ones that if I was looking at them in a line, I'd be thinking, that might be my cup of tea. We shall have to see. Actually, I just read the blurb for Love Forms by, who's it by? Love Forms by Claire Adam. And I realised I read this blurb yesterday because it sounded very familiar. It's about someone called Dawn Bishop who grows up in Trinidad and is taken away to Venezuela when she's 16 to give birth and have her baby given up for adoption. And it's about her kind of thinking about what might have been, and then later on, 40 years later, someone gets in touch saying that they might be her long lost daughter. And so that does sound like an intriguing premise, but the thing that puts me off this book was I had a conversation with a friend earlier, and she said that this has been described by the Times as being a bit like a Claire Keegan story rewritten by Elizabeth Strout, and that sounds ghastly, to be honest. It's yeah, I mean, I'm just not a fan. Like I've read a Claire Keegan book, Small Things Like These, and it was good, but it just wasn't as like life-changingly amazing as everybody says it was. It's a nice short story. It's a well-written short story. It's heartwarming, but when something is like over-enthused about so much by literally everybody, and it just puts me off. It just makes me you know, when something's overhyped, it's a bit like that, and it doesn't feel fair, and you feel like there are works that like do so much more that are being ignored. It's that kind of feeling. And Elizabeth Strout, I had my first my first Elizabeth Strout experience. So if you want to watch my I do a very, very big rant about Tell Me Everything, which was obviously shortlisted for the Women's Prize, and in my wrap up for last month, quite a lot of the last part of that video is me ranting about Elizabeth Strout. Not ranting about Elizabeth Strout herself, I'm sure she's lovely, but ranting about that particular book and why I wasn't a fan. So if you're a fan of Elizabeth Strout, don't go anywhere near that video. I am going to be trying Olive Kitteridge, but just the fact that books that are deliberately trying to tug on my heartstrings, books that use emotional subjects for literary purposes as opposed to letting it kind of come out naturally, I don't know. I'm hoping this won't be one of them, but my friend did say that, and it did make me think, oh goodness, this is not going to be one that I like. But it's made the long list, so what do I know? What else have we got on here? Now, most of the rest of them I actually haven't heard of at all. So yeah, we've got a few more. These are probably going to be a little bit more niche. Next we have Sea Scraper by Benjamin Wood. Looking at this familiar cover, I think this might have been one that was on Ben Reedgood's wish list, because the cover's kind of familiar and it is very beautiful. So I can see why he he likes it. Okay, so this is the story of a man who works as a, well, it says a shanker, but then it says he collects shrimp, so I'm assuming that's a job that involves collecting shellfish from the beach, although I couldn't be sure about that, who dreams of being a musician. So it's a story of someone who is feeling very limited and very caged in by their social class. I don't know if does it say it's modern? It doesn't, because he's using a horse and cart, so I think it's probably going to be in a historical setting. Although people do have horses and carts now, it could be modern, I'm not sure. It sounds like someone turns up from Hollywood and, you know, promises a life of glamour. So I don't know how that plays out or how he's going to contend with that. Again, it doesn't sound like it doesn't immediately jump out as being my sort of thing. It sounds like a quiet little novel about wanting, you know, wanting stardom, which isn't usually kind of the sort of themes I'd necessarily radiate to, but if it's got something to be said about kind of social mobility and class and things like that, that might be interesting. And I certainly agree, if indeed it was Ben Reedgood, that the cover is very beautiful. And I don't know, is this an indie book? I get the impression this might be from a small press, just from how it looks, but I'm not sure about that, so don't take me at my word there. So the next book on the list, The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller. I was just looking at the cover and I thought that they were tanks. And I thought it was going to be a World War II novel. I thought that was a guy with a hat in the middle and then some tanks, but I think it's actually a dry stone wall. And reading the blurb, it looks more to be about rural couples in winter, in blizzards. Oh, this doesn't sound like my sort of thing either. This sounds very boring. I don't know, maybe the blurb just makes it sound boring. But yeah, quiet stories about couples. I mean, there needs to be a bit of something to kind of lure me in. We need a bit of cheese in these blurbs. We need some little cheese to lure the ray in so that I'll bite. Well, it's on the long list, so that'll have to be cheese enough. Tagline says, a masterful page-turning examination of the minutiae of life and a dazzling chronicle of the human heart. I've got quite a lot of minutiae going on in my own life. I'm not sure. I'm not. Sorry, I mean, this might be the most amazing. Like, some of these books that I'm thinking might be brilliant, might be terrible, and some of these books that I'm thinking that I'm rolling my eyes at might be great. Have you read it? What do you think? If you've read any of these books and you like think, you know, it doesn't take much to persuade me to be excited about a book. So yeah, I mean, generally speaking, my heart doesn't really want to be warmed. But I know there's a lot of people out there who do want their hearts to be warmed. So yeah. I want something weird on the list. I like weird stuff. Audition's great. Audition's very weird. Oh gosh, the next one sounds... Again, same sort of thing. It's a book called The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovitz. And it's plugged as being an unforgettable road trip of a novel about getting older and the challenges of a long-term marriage. So when Tom Laywood's wife had an affair, he resolved to leave as soon as his younger daughter turned 18. 12 years later, while driving her to Pittsburgh to start university, he remembers this pact. Apparently he's also got health issues. Oh, and apparently he's been suspended from work because of the politics of his law class. Ooh, has he been cancelled? This actually makes it more interesting to me. Is our protagonist morally grey and with slightly dodgy views? After dropping Miriam off, he keeps driving with the vague plan of visiting various people from his past. Okay, it's getting boring again. An old college friend, his ex-girlfriend, his brother, his son en route, maybe to his father's grave in California. And it's a book about family, marriage, and the moments which may come to define us. Yeah. And the final offering is from Tash Orr, who is apparently no stranger to the Booker-list. And it looks like he's written 5 novels and 3 of them have been Booker nominated. So yeah, that is an achievement. Anyway, this book, again, I like the cover, but it is about a family moving south after their grandfather dies and leaves them his property. But when they get there, it's a bit of a dump and they have a lot of work to do. So the young boy who's the grandson, as it were, gets to work in the fields, and it sounds like there is a mutual attraction with the son of one of their neighbours or managers of the farm, called Chuan. I don't know how old Jay and Chuan are. Yeah, it's not clear whether they're two, like, because how that novel's going to play out and how it's going to feel will depend on how old the boys are. And you know, whether it's going to be a sweet little childhood romance or whether it's going to be a, when they say boy, do they mean like 18-year-olds? Do they mean 10-year-olds? You know, they're going to be completely different feels of a novel depending on what kind of attraction, what kind of a relationship they have. So, but it sounds like it's going to be more kind of heartwarming rather than anything else. And yeah, and it's basically about the summer that they spend together. So I'm a little bit more intrigued by that one. But again, it's not something that was on my radar. So that is our 13th book. So I think we've gone through all of them now. Guys, what do you think of the long list? And are you seeing any possible shortlist emerging already? So yeah, Audition. I've already read Audition. I might actually have to do a separate review video now. I already talked about it, I think, in one of my wrap-ups recently. I just read that and wanted to read everything Katie Kitamura has ever read before. It was brilliant. And everybody has been talking so much about Flesh that that's got to be high priority as well. Yeah. I don't actually know whether to prioritise these books or the books that appealed most to me when I was doing the research, because there's been so many fantastic sounding books coming out this year and I'm excited about all of them. And I think maybe I'll just barricade myself into this room. We've got a window, someone can kind of send me buckets of food up and I'll just stay here for the foreseeable future. And you know, you'll have to you'll have to come and drag me out. But yeah, so what do you guys think of the long list? It's been a long time since I've been this excited about a list of books being announced, and don't they look good together? Don't they all look nice? This is from the book website, and yeah, let's talk about them. What are your thoughts? I think everybody, I am not surprised that I'm surprised, because they never pick what we're expecting them to. They always like to go a bit obscure, and in a way that's good, because it means that books that wouldn't necessarily have got attention get brought to the foreground. So I wonder how many of these I will be able to get read before the shortlist is announced in, I don't know, a couple of months. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to comment if you want to join the discussion. Thank you for sharing this with me. Bye for now.